My name is Sylvia Cyrus. I am proud to say that I am the Executive Director of the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, the founders of Black History Month.
Please tell me a little bit about yourself and your family background.
Well, my family on both sides actually is from Virginia. And as you may be aware, Virginia has been the site of a lot of conversation as over the past 12 months, the whole idea and the learning about those Angolans that landed at Point Comfort in Virginia, really being the start of what became African Americans in the British colonies. I don't know if I'm related to any of those individuals directly, but certainly in my spirit and that of my family, we certainly connect to the continent. My family, particularly on my mother's side, is from Middlesex County, Virginia, where they were farmers and they worked the water. They were hardworking people, always believed in the value of education, so much so that my grandmother, who was born a little after slavery, went to Virginia, what is now Virginia State, when it was like a high school, to get an education. And certainly at that point in time, how much it cost to be able to go just really represented an investment that our family had, and that has been something that our family has invested in since that time. So we are proud college graduates or people who have gone on and gotten advanced degrees. We also have some entrepreneurs in our family as well, and we attribute that to a strong legacy in our family.
I will have to concede that these questions are a bit loaded considering your professional position as the Executive Director for ASALH, but we will continue just the same. Why is family history important, in your opinion, specifically and in general?
Well, I think family history is important because it does shape who you are as a person. And it does give you the wind beneath your wings to know where you've come from, whether it be very humble background or whether you have famous people in your background. But it is just so important to know that we've all had some struggle and triumph in our lives. And it, I believe, really helps so much to know that when you hit the bumps in the road in life, that you can look back to members of your family who can give you inspiration to continue to persevere.
How can ASALH as an institution help its members or the community find ways to help preserve or be encouraged to help our communities preserve their family histories in concert with ASALH?
Well, I think that there's no group, or very few groups, outside of African Americans who care more about their history. Black people have been celebrating who we are and what we have accomplished since we have been, I believe, on this planet. Even through our time here in North America, even after enslavement, African Americans were celebrating and commemorating. We say that we're the founders of Black History Month. And that inspiration came from our founder, Dr. Carter G. Woodson, who looked at our community and saw that we as a community were commemorating the birth of Abraham Lincoln after he was assassinated. We commemorated the birth of Frederick Douglass after he passed away for his great abolitionist work and work that he did. And in 1926, he said, we don't have to celebrate people individually, we can celebrate the race. So that whole idea of our history, and particularly our family history, is so important. And through ASALH, what has really been so powerful and inspirational to me is that we have many generations of individuals who really are proud of who they are, that find a home here in ASALH. It is so important for many generations of your family to be a part of this association. And so even today, our membership appeal was for individuals to make sure that their children and grandchildren were members of this organization. And we have so many great stories to tell, and they're so much more powerful, not just when you talk about yourself, but to hear your grandchildren talk about you, just as is great. And that's what we do here at ASALH.
Last question on the topic of family history, and again, a point of personal privilege as you are in the hot seat. Ms. Cyrus, are there any stories from your family history that you might be willing to share that might enlighten, illume, or cause us to chuckle that you could impart into us at this moment?
Well, the chuckling part would be really, I think there are a lot of stories that are kind of funny. My mother, as I said, grew up in Virginia on a farm. And she would say that, of course, the family, there were 6 children and they all had to go into the fields. And she used to tell the story of how her father knew which row she was working with picking tomatoes, because if the row had a lot of worms, my mother was scared of the worms, so she wouldn't pick the tomatoes. So if he saw that they were tomatoes that hadn't been picked, he said, Ruby must have had this row because she didn't pick because the worms were there. So, it's just amazing. Now, still in my family, even when we moved to Linden, New Jersey, my parents had a garden, and my mother still planted tomatoes. And I guess now in thinking, when there were too many worms, it was my father who had to pick those tomatoes. So that legacy continued.
Outstanding. Thank you for that. We'll transition now to the vote. Again, as the executive director and a personal point of privilege sitting where I am and where you are, I want to ask you, we're focusing on the vote this year. Assuming there's just no coincidence that this is a voting year, why is this, in addition to the obvious, a push for this message going forward for members and friends of ASALH?
2020 Black History Month theme, or Black History theme, African Americans in the vote. It's important to reinforce the obvious. It's important for every American to know that you have a civic responsibility to pick the best candidate, the candidate who supports what your needs are, that believes in what you believe in, and to support that candidate. And so often in this country, we have not been trained in civics the way that we should be. We have been made to believe that we are so far outside the process that our vote doesn't matter. And so the association is casting a light this year that every American, especially African Americans, must be educated on the issues and they must vote. And we have a long history and legacy of what it took for our people to be able to cast that vote. And because of all the elders, what they have done to make sure that we could, everyone has a responsibility to go to the polls, to take family and friends to the polls, and to vote your interest.
Is there anything that you can say, both as an individual voter and the executive director for ASALH, that we can target our younger people about the importance of registering and voting?
Voting and family history go together for me. I realized the importance of voting because my parents, when they went to the polls to vote, they took my brother and me. And so I was always there. And so as a parent, when you want your children to get the message, you get them thoroughly involved. And so we had to sit down with the ballot and look at the candidates, and although we may not have understood the issues, and sometimes the questions on those ballots was not very clear, but we did it as a family so that my parents could make sure that we understood that every single time the polls opened, that we had to be there. And so family history should include a strong legacy of voting. It should include a strong history of talking as a family about those issues that are of great interest to your family, whether they deal with voting and government and civics, or whether it's just talking about the great accomplishments or not so much the accomplishments of family members, so that we have that foundation. Family history is important. Voting is important. And that's what ASALH is pushing.
My last comment that you can respond to ties us or brings us home with respect to the historical context of voting. 2020, we are acknowledging the 150th year of the 15th Amendment and the 150th year of the 15th Amendment and the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment. Respectively, the right for black men to vote from 1870 and the right for women to vote 100 years ago. How does ASALH reinforce the importance of these anniversaries today?
ASALH looks at anniversaries like the 15th and the 19th Amendment. And through our network of scholars, we will have conversations, we will do historical research, and much of that will happen at our 105th annual conference, which will be held September 23rd through 27th in Montgomery, Alabama. And so we encourage individuals to come to Montgomery, to take part in the history around voting and civil rights that happened in Montgomery. And it is so impactful when you walk those same streets, when you sit in those same seats that those individuals before us who fought so hard for us to be able to have the right to vote, the right to sit next to others in different places, on a bus, in a church, etc. We are a phenomenal people. And when we walk those same halls, when we hear those same stories that we will reinforce at that conference, I promise you, you will leave Montgomery feeling better about what it means to be black. You will leave Montgomery feeling empowered, because by that point you'll be a member of the Association for the Study of African American Life and History. And so we just encourage everyone to join, to support, to listen to our annual themes each year. The vote is very important this year. Next year we'll be talking about the black family. For 94 years, as is the legacy of Dr. Carter G. Woodson, we select themes that we ask the world to think about that impact your lives in a better way. And we believe at ASALH that we do a great job of inspiring our nation.
For 105 years, that testifies as truth and fact. Ms. Sylvia Cyrus, thank you for your time today. Godspeed and God bless.
Thank you.